Okay, good morning. Today is October 13th, 2017. I want to share something about what's happening and what's going to be happening soon based on some dreams. So, first, the central thought of this is that President Trump, I think that's the first time I've ever called him that because he's such a joke. This guy is really carrying out his part in a plot. He has a specific job to do. He is to whip up chaos. He is going to create so much chaos that we are crying out for someone to come in and stabilize things. And that someone is going to be Barack Obama. And so anyway, I got my finger in a lot of different places. Okay, so what's going to happen is they're going to really end welfare, which is going to create a lot of chaos and suffering. Now, for adults, able-bodied adults capable of working, we should not be feeding them. We absolutely should not be feeding able-bodied people who can work. And not only are we feeding able-bodied people who can work, we are set up a system that encourages these able-bodied people who can work to have children, to have helpless people who can't work. Those are the ones who are going to suffer. So, one of the final blows, the final blow is going to be children, hungry children, truly hungry children, suffering terribly. They'll probably even be abandoned by these women that had them in order to keep growing their welfare check. So the women will probably do what the men have done, which is just walk away. And then it'll be clear. So anyway, Trump, in addition to all the other craziness that he's espousing, which I do not think at all that he is doing these things of himself. He's just following the script and the agenda that he's been given so that he can carry out the purpose for which he was propped up, it is still so unbelievable to me that people actually elected this man. Or that they were consenting to this. Because the American people don't really elect anyone. We just accept the choice that's been made for us. So welfare ends, chaos and suffering ensue, and then Obama comes riding back in to save the day. All right. Now, I'll get back to that. But that's the overall idea. On 9/26, I had a dream that I've previously shared, but I'll read it again. Okay. It was a baby in a bassinet. And the bassinet was very much too small for the baby. One huge thing had already been taken away, and they were taking away the third, and there were only 3. There was lots of grief about it. And all of these people, all of this was about, they were all black welfare recipients. So there's a baby in a bassinet. The bassinet was too small for the baby. And one big thing had already been taken away. And they were taking away the second thing, and there were only 3 things. Then I fell back asleep, and I dreamed, continuing this, that the third thing was getting pregnant again. And that it was the baby in the bassinet that was pregnant. And then I saw a news story about, it was in the city of Cleveland, and how they were reporting that, if you get arrested, you lose your benefits. So this is all about welfare. And, then after I had this dream, then I kind of did some research, and I found out that Trump is cutting welfare, cutting Section 8, which is the housing, the free and very, very reduced housing benefit that welfare recipients get. So I found out that this is actually true, and this is happening, and that many people are agreeing with Trump. Like, I even saw some black men, which are, some of the number one people that hate Trump, some of the number one people. But, because Trump is, never mind. I don't want to get into that Trump stuff. But, so there's black guys making videos saying, I knew it was something I liked about Trump, and I agree with him on this, because they're rejoicing over the fact that all these black women are not going to be able to abuse the system anymore. And they're just laughing and really rejoicing over this, which on a certain level, everybody can identify. Everybody can identify with. So they're laughing because there's 3 main conditions that people being on welfare, women being on welfare, perpetuate. One thing is fatherlessness, having babies out of wedlock, having babies that they can't care for and don't care for. You don't love a child that you bring into the world that you can't provide for it. There's no love in that. And, you haven't given it a family, you haven't given it a father, and you haven't even given that any thought. The only thing that you've given any thought to is how thirsty and desperate you are for men to sleep with them, and then there's no consequences for having been irresponsible reproductively. So that's one thing men are rejoicing over. And it also put a lot of women in these in this socioeconomic strata in the driver's seat in a lot of relationships. Not necessarily in the driver's seat, but in a position where they can strike out at these men, because the men live with these women. They go from place to place in these women's houses, which these houses are provided by Section 8 welfare. So when the women get mad at the men, or the men don't do what the women want them to do, they throw them out. So that's another reason why the men are rejoicing over this, because it's kind of like these women getting their just desserts. And then there are men who have been like turned over to the child support people, and these people are like bloodsuckers. The last thing they care about is getting money for these kids. They are just they're contracted by the government, and they make a profit off of collecting child support. And I heard they take like 25% of whatever they collect. And they've been given the power of the government in that, they can turn these people over to be arrested if they don't do it. So there's a YouTuber, I'm not going to even mention his name because he's such a vulgar man, a vulgar, godless man. But nonetheless, he's speaking the truth about a lot of things. And what he was saying was that the reward for men who have children that they can't support is that they go to jail. And the reward for women who have children that they can't support is a place to stay, free medical care, free food, and cash money. So they get, set up with the sweet life, ghetto, fabulous, sweet life. And the men get hounded, harassed, and thrown in jail. Not saying that the men should get set up with the sweet life, but what it's saying is that look at the unequal treatment of two people committing the same offense. So you have to know there's some agenda at work there. And just real quickly, the agenda is to set up a society with a power structure in which the female is in charge and the male is neutralized, because this is the opposite of God's order. So knowing that the power of God can't work and flow through that, that's what the Antichrist wants to set up, a world that is totally upside down to the kingdom of heaven. So men are rejoicing all over the planet, or all over the United States. Black men and middle-class people and all kinds of people rejoicing over the fact that these lazy women, who are the just sorry excuses for mothers, are no longer going to be able to just pop out babies for the purpose of being supported themselves. But at the same time, while you're rejoicing over that, which everybody understands, no one should be fed that doesn't work. That there is going to be collateral damage from pulling that welfare rug out from under these women. And that is all the children that they've created. All the helpless children are going to create the excuse. They're going to highlight people are going to say what's wrong with Trump's America is, you can't ignore the human side of things and focus only on fiscal concerns. Now, I'm not saying that because I don't believe that government should be put in place to take care of those problems. Love your neighbor. So when this stuff happens, and you know some children that are suffering, and they have a worthless mother, and they don't know who their father is, and their father doesn't know who they are. Because some of these women, they've slept with so many men, and we see it. We see it on these TV shows, these DNA shows, where they have tested several men, and none of them are the father. They have been just this promiscuous because they're not occupied in any productive work. So what else is there to do but hop around and lay around in the bed and sleep with men? So, we've seen these women, and they'll bring several men and say they're 2,000% sure that he's the father, and not only is he not the father, but the next guy's not the father, and the last guy wasn't the father, and they truly don't even know who the father was. So there's a lot of these kids, they haven't even been given a clue as to who their father is. So that stands to reason that some of these guys, there are men out there who have children, and they don't know it. They don't know who these children are. They have been very irresponsible with who they lay with, and they've made children that they don't even know about. So on the other end of cutting all those people off, there's truly going to be suffering at the end of that. And they're going to come out and say, this is going to be the final galvanizing force that will allow Trump to be taken out of the way. Because this will be considered a great failure of his policies, that for whatever he's doing in creating this situation of hungry, starving, suffering children like little refugees in their own country. And his creating this and being cold-hearted and ignoring this will be the excuse for something that's going to happen. All right, so back in February of 2017, I had this dream. Okay. Okay, there was a lukewarm, not even a lukewarm, just a Pharisee Christian that I know, and she was giving me a tour of this $20 million hotel that was being renovated. So there was a $20 million renovation going on to this hotel, and it was being done by some black guy. She's showing me around, and I still thought the place was a mess. And what it was the taste was poor. There was a clash of tastes in there. So then, as she was showing me around, at the end of the hall was the Oval Office. This is interesting. Was the Oval Office, which was now very public and common. So, several phones rang in there in the Oval Office as if they were hotlines. Someone answered. I said, "What's wrong?" The person who was black said, "He hung himself by his ankles because he didn't he did it because supposedly he was distraught over the state of the country. Now, this is talking about Obama. And how he was no longer in a position to help. So, I was trying to call a friend of mine when I heard this news. And as I was looking at a phone, and I remember that this phone was different. There was something very different about this phone than the phones we have now. So the phone didn't look familiar. So then I was saying, as I was trying to dial this person, I was saying, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Okay. So there was just a little bit more about this hotel. It had massive ceilings and marble with intricate designs. But like I said, at the same time, it was tacky. Okay. So their ceilings were 100 feet in some places. And Barack hung himself in his bathroom at his new home. Because he was out of the White House. So the bathroom had the color scheme of aqua blue. And the floor, which was redone, was rust colors and creams. Now, so anyway, that sets up the atmosphere in the country when Barack Obama comes back. And that is that he's coming as some hero worship. And listen to this. Revelation chapter 13. And the beast, verse 2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and seat and great authority. And I saw one of its heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? So, one of his heads were, as it were, wounded to death. And his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. So that's what set me off to saying, it's happening, because I realized with the death of Obama, it was setting him back to have his deadly wound healed, and then for him to come back and all the world to wonder after the beast. So, like I said, that's to set the tone in the country where he's come gallivanting in like some hero and to save the people from all this heartless suffering. And if you want to get people and turn on their sympathy, and to get them thinking emotionally rather than rationally, puppies and children, puppies, babies, and children. And then you set up some scenario where you tug at them emotionally, and then they will ignore reason and follow in the direction of the thoughts that you want them to have. We have to make sure that we are not this way. Just because someone presents you with a scenario of suffering, don't automatically accept their solution to that suffering. There will be suffering people. Not that this is going to stop anything, because this is going to happen. But the answer to suffering children is feed them. If you have food, feed them. If they're out in the street, take them in. When their mothers abandon them because they didn't love them in the first place, then take these children up. Great will be your reward in heaven. But the majority of people won't do that. There will be great suffering. And Obama will use these things as his the premise upon which he comes back. All right. Also, listen to this dream. This was about a month after the dream about Obama hanging himself, because he was so upset about what was coming in the country and what was happening and what a mess everything was, and how he was no longer in any position of power to help. Okay. So this was on 3/29/17. A dream about Obama. He was very long, like something. He was like something full of milk, a long line. He was like something full of butter. He was a dominant presence. He was everywhere, so to speak. He is the beast. And when I woke up and wrote that down, it reminded me of hunger and famine. And so that's what I wrote, that this had something to do with people being hungry. So one of the things that government likes to give away is, milk and butter. Butter, remember cheese and butter? So that's what he's going to do, come back. And there are going to be long lines of hungry people. And he's going to, come in like this person that's a humanitarian, a lover of people, an alleviator of suffering. And people are going to start thinking with their desperately wicked hearts rather than with the mind of Christ, because they don't have the mind of Christ, because they haven't put on Christ, because they haven't washed themselves with the Word, which is Christ. So one last thing. This really deserves to be its own video, but I'll just throw it in here a little bit. One last thing about Trump was around in this same time, back in February, I heard this. Total inferno. 1/3 of people. And lots of stuff about Trump. All bad. And I wrote above that, when I looked at it again, World War III. Total inferno. 1/3 of people. Lots of stuff about Trump. All bad. And that 1/3 represents the number of people killed. A third of the entire population killed in war. And who's going to instigate this war? Lots of stuff about Trump. He is he's being used to create division, chaos, and just madness, pitting people against each other, just craziness. They said lots of stuff about Trump and all of it was bad. And this is going to, the craziness that he's doing is going to lead to World War III. I'm not saying that he's just, listen, don't think of it in terms of Hillary and Barack or Trump. That's not the case, guys. Trump is all a part of the same thing. He is all a part of the same agenda. Can't you understand that the forces that we are dealing with are able to set the stage in such a way that they truly control both sides? And they only use this two-sided thing to divide people because of just divide and conquer. Neither platform of either party works for the good of mankind. Human government can never sustain mankind and can never remain a civilization, because the human being is controlled by his flesh and Satan. We need the government that's going to come and be upon the shoulders of Jesus Christ. We need the kingdoms of this world to become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and for him to reign forever and ever. And that's the only thing that's going to work. One last dream I want to read. This was, I don't know if I can find it, but people were following a false light, and they were following that false light into destruction. And that false light was Trump. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. I don't even know if it will be worth trying to find it. Just to tell you that I had that dream. That there was, and the light was blue. An eerie, eerie blue. And that light was the same color, that blueness was the same blue that I saw on the Antichrist. And it was the same eerie blue that I saw when I saw the swirl. Remember that swirl that was in the sky somewhere in Europe over CERN? That was them opening that portal to another dimension to allow spiritual wickedness into our world. So that swirl was blue, and I saw that swirl in a dream, and it was blue. So there's something about this eerie, icy blue color that represents the devil. So anyway, we have this picture that the devil is, red and black, and evil looks like really stereotypically evil. But I'm here to tell you that the devil is going to appear handsome and good, and things are going to look very idyllic, and he's going to come off as a good thing. So meanwhile, we've all been set up to think of evil as very iconically evil, and people running around with pitchforks and ripping the eyes out of puppies, and taking little children and ripping the arms off their teddy bears. But that's not how the devil comes. That would be really stupid. He comes like a wolf in sheep's clothing. So watch out, Barack Obama is coming back. at the end of this month, on Halloween of all days, a day when, the witches and warlocks and spells and blood drinkers are all going forth, trying to summon up the devil. He's having an inauguration. And I had a video about that. Well, I didn't know it was about that at the time, because it was back in May, but it was his inauguration. What I dreamed about was his inauguration as the beast. And what better day for the Antichrist to be inaugurated as the beast than on 10/31. If any Christian sends their child out into the night in a costume this year, knowing all we know, how will you escape the curse? I won't celebrate a harvest day or any substitute as a way of, toning down Halloween and participating in the rituals of pagans. So, God bless you.